Yeah, what's going on, family? It's your man B Miles coming to you live once again with another live stream up on StreamYard tonight. Yeah, definitely. It's definitely going to be another live stream, fam. I know, like we said, we're going to get started around like 8:30. So, like I said, we still, I'm a little behind, but we still really on time. It's 8:37, Eastern Standard Time and stuff like that. And I definitely will say it's going to be a really great live stream tonight. It's definitely going to be lit, and I'm actually going to be featuring, what I mean, a good, I'm saying, YouTuber on here, I'm saying, which is one of the good warriors, what I mean, that I really respect and really admire on here, stuff like that. He's going to be, bringing information about about pretty much about what we've been talking about, as far as like current events, stuff like that, what's been taking place on the ground, what's happening behind the scenes and stuff like that. And like I say, you know how we do up in the chat. We always keep it, very cordial, very respectful. This is a place for, like-minded individuals, like-minded people who want to come here and learn. Take this information, process it, read and research it. That's what we do over here. We grow, elevate, and evolve, and at the same time, we learn from one another. So that's how we do it over here. And without further ado, and no more introduction, here it is, Citizen Man. Go on, brother.
What's going on, everybody? Thank you for having me on, B Miles. I appreciate you doing this, brother, every time. Uh, well, let's talk about this illegal immigration, man. What's the latest you've been hearing? Because I heard you talking about them being shipped to D.C. and New York and these liberal cities. What are your thoughts on that?
Man, it's to me, it's not a coincidence because it's like they've been talking about the whole nuclear tech and stuff like that, and then we already know like New York and DC, those are like democratic cities and stuff like that, and it's I just find it real funny that they're shipping them to like those two main places like New York and DC, and we know that New York is a very major city and stuff like that. We know DC is the city state over here in the United States, so we know like what goes on behind the scenes down in DC. So I see the connection, stuff like that, but I definitely would like your perspective.
No, no doubt, no doubt. Well, what I see happening is, first of all, Governor Abbott down in Texas reported recently that he has not heard a single word from the Biden administration about controlling the borders. So it's starting to look like each one of those border states are going to have to do their own thing to secure the borders themselves with no federal help, no federal intervention. The military's down there doing what they can, but their resources are limited too. And the shipping of these illegal immigrants to these liberal cities, I think it's excuse me, it's part of a political scheme. Number one, to bolster their voting block because too many black people. It used to be black people supporting the Democrats in these liberal cities, and because so many black people are starting to wake up now with all this Joe Biden nonsense, they're feeling a little nervous about depending on the black vote. So now they're bringing in a new voting block to replace those black voters. And not only that, but on a darker side of things, it seems to be some sort of paramilitary invasion where 80+% of these illegals are military age males.
There you
And we've
go.
heard and we've heard talks about, the UN bringing in troops and, getting ready to invade us and whatnot. And I believe that a large contingent of these so-called illegals could be those UN troops being brought in under the guise of
Hmm.
mass migration. Now,
Hmm.
now, what their operations are going to look like, I don't know, but I do know that these same liberal cities, they have no problem allowing infiltrators to wear their government banners, put on their uniforms, and pretend to be them. They did it during the Boston bombing. They had Russians going door to door pretending to be Americans with one American squad leader with those SWAT teams. And the rest of the guys had heavy European accents, as reported by people on the ground. So this is nothing new. This is nothing that should take us by surprise. But I expect to see a lot more foreigners wearing American police and military uniforms. Now, what they're going to use those uniforms for, what they're going to use that manpower for, I really couldn't tell you. I want to say gun confiscation and possibly kinetic attacks, like military style attacks as well. But that's still up in the air because these liberal cities, they already have mass gun bans happening, and the only people that really have the guns are the criminal element, which they obviously have no intention of disarming. Otherwise, they'd be putting these guys in jail, right? So I see these liberal cities possibly being used as a base of operations for their kinetic operations against other cities where people are heavily armed and there are active militia groups and hardened defenses where the people can actually come together and fight off an invading army. Now, if they have the force of these liberal cities governments behind them, then they'll have manpower, equipment, and all types of shit that we the people probably would have a hard time getting our hands on. So that's one point of concern. The second point of concern is the Department of Homeland Security warning for Americans to stock up on 3 months worth of food and water and whatnot. Yeah, I heard about that, Emmanuel. Trump's Mar-a-Lago getting raided by the FBI. I was actually going to cover that on my Wednesday night show, but nevertheless. So there's a lot of different elements that we could look at when it comes to this illegal immigration, but I think the main objective is to solidify their political base. I think that's what it is, because at the end of the day, what they want is to have the power of government behind them. Now, the failsafe would be those kinetic attacks if the people start, voting them out of office, start holding them accountable, start taking over the election commissions and not allowing these corrupt state actors to run the election commissions in favor of whatever party they favor and whatnot, mainly the Democrat Party, obviously. But it's enough cause for concern, and I hope that the states step up and start securing the border themselves. That's my hope. Now, another element to the illegal immigration is the cartels infiltrating the United States, because the cartels have the foot soldiers, the cartels have the shooters, and the cartels have that malintent where they're willing to kill anybody in their way. So that's another thing to consider right there when you think if things go hot and we have to mount a resistance, we're dealing with stone cold killers that have no problem putting one in you, so don't hesitate. That's my advice. I think that the main goal is to wipe us out, those of us who are actually awake, and keep the sheep as the permanent slave class, so they can raise their kids to be slaves and their kids to be slaves and so on and so forth, because, well, we're dangerous to their agenda, right? We're the ones that are teaching our kids to say no to this crap. We're the ones that are teaching our kids the Constitution, and are teaching our kids their rights. You know what I'm saying? We're the ones that are actually educating our children on how to be free and how to maintain a free society, when meanwhile the people in power don't want a population like that. So even if it means bringing in millions and millions of foreigners to replace the indigenous or the local population, well, they will do that. Remember, these same liberal cities are the same ones that were getting employers to force the smack on people so they can keep their jobs and all that shit. So what their intentions are. They don't have good intentions for any of us. So, all this bringing in the illegals and we're going to help the illegals crap, that's what it is. It's a bunch of crap. It's lies. It's propaganda. And it's to cover up a darker agenda. What else you want to get into, B Miles?
Wow. You know what? Can we go just a little more deeper into that subject, Berg? You just going in real
Sure.
heavy.
Yeah, sure. Now, as Black Americans, this issue should be of particular interest to us, because back in 2018, when the migrant caravans were coming, everybody was on the fuck Trump train, and everybody was, going along with what the fake news was saying, which I thought was insane to me, because as Black people, we should be the last ones to trust the damn media. But somehow when it came to Trump and the illegals, we were on the side of the media, which I thought was extremely odd. But once these illegals started coming in and taking up residence in these low income neighborhoods, which are mainly populated by our people, then Black Americans started to wake up and realize that, well, we're being undermined at this point. Our resources that are allocated for us are now going to them. They're getting favoritism, and it's all because we accepted this title of minority. Because you see, the minority label is what they created to remove the Negro label, the black label, the colored label, everything that pertains to American citizens. And they use the term minority, so now they can include other people who are non-white from other ethnicities from foreign countries, which means now, in typical foreign agent fashion, these Democrats can now allocate resources to these quote unquote minorities and then parade around as if they're doing something great for black people when black people ain't getting shit. And the thing about it is, all these black people that were advocating for these illegals to come in and, open up the border and let them come and da 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 da. Once they started feeling the pinch of being replaced, they quickly changed their tune. Like, I don't see too many black people in favor of illegal immigration anymore. And the reason why so many black people were in favor of it back in 2018 was because the news was convincing everybody that somehow this was a racial issue, when it wasn't a racial issue. It was a nationalist issue, meaning it wasn't one race of people versus another race of people. It was a nation of people versus another nation of people. And that nation of people was invading the United States and undermining American nationals, mainly black American nationals, here in their own country. So as black people, we must be front and center against this illegal immigration, and we must be the loudest voices calling for a stop to that shit, because we're going to be the first group to get thrown under the bus when it's time to allocate resources. We're going to be the last in line. We're going to be the first ones front and center to fight, and then the last in line to get those resources when it's time to allocate those resources.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we need to understand. When you support these Democrats, they say all this nice shit that they're going to do this and they're going to fix this and they're going to fix that problem and racism and slavery, and we're here for you. And they don't give a shit about you. Look how the Joe Biden administration did Ice Cube. He went to them to talk to them about an economic plan for black people. They told him come back after the election. The election came and went, not a word out of them. Meanwhile, the big bad racist Trump, his people actually sat down with Ice Cube and had a serious conversation with the man, because they're actually serious about doing something for the American people. Another example of how the Democrat Party doesn't give a shit about their own people. You remember in 2016 when the primary was happening, the majority of people who did not support Trump and supported the left were in support of Bernie Sanders getting the nomination. Remember that, B Miles? You remember how Bernie was pulling crowds as big as Trump?
Oh yeah.
And what did the Democratic Party do? They said, screw what the people want. We're going to give you Hillary.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That should have been red flag number one, to know that these people are not operating in your best interest. They're operating in their own best interest. Because even the Republican Party, as much as the Republicans hated Trump, so much so that they even formed a group called Never Trumpers. Guess what happened? Trump won the support of the people in the primary, and he was given the nomination because they actually played by their own rules. They didn't change the rules halfway through, make up new rules to make sure that their guy got in. They didn't do that. Excuse me. So as corrupt as you could say the Republican Party is, one thing you can't say about them is they don't honor the will, of the people, because they do. The Democrat Party, on the other hand, you're not the people to them. You're not the political power brokers in their eyes. You are their slaves. Hence why they're the party of slavery. They don't care what you want. They don't care what you think. They don't care what you believe. All they care about is that you give them your vote, because you belong to them. You ever notice how black conservatives were getting a lot of shit talked to them because they supported Trump in the beginning? But for some reason, white conservatives and white liberals had a choice to choose whichever candidate they wanted. But for some reason, black people were being, chastised and alienated for supporting Trump. Like, we're not allowed to support who the fuck we want to support.
Oh yeah.
That's that liberal racism right there. That's that leftist racism. And a lot of black folks overlook that shit while simultaneously crying racism, while supporting the party of freaking racism. It's the weirdest thing. It is the weirdest thing. And the same party of racism that claims they love black people so much are now bringing in millions and millions of illegal immigrants to move into your apartments, to take your jobs, to take over your neighborhoods. But yeah, man.
Oh yeah, matter of fact, can you expand as far as like what's been going on like as far as like the military dumps and stuff like that, and even also you heard about I think they said somebody was over there stepping down, or somebody was over there stepping down or something like that. They we was talking about it earlier. Somebody was stepping down.
I didn't catch that part of it. I didn't catch that part of it. But yeah, you want to know about the underground tunnels and stuff? There's actually maps that you can find on the internet from back in the 1960s and 70s that show all the main tunnels running through the entire country. And back in 2018, I think it was, the Military Times actually produced an article with the headline, DOD spends $500 million to train soldiers to fight underground. And this is when all the rumors of the underground warfare and the tunnels being blown up started circulating around. And people were, a lot of people were in denial of it and didn't want to believe it. But then when that Military Times article started circulating, then people started to realize, well, yeah, they wouldn't be training soldiers to fight underground if they didn't have intentions of going underground. Now, the reason why they were going underground, obviously, was to go after the human traffickers, go after the drug traffickers, and any other contraband that they could have been moving down there. Um, they started out on the West Coast from the border and they started working their way east. That's why we started hearing these explosions. I mean, not these explosions, but hearing about these earthquakes in weird parts of the countries, in weird parts of the country where there are no fault lines and they should be no earthquakes happening. Those were actually explosives being detonated underground. And I actually had grabbed a couple of screenshots of the Richter scale readings and compared them to a North Korean underground nuclear test, and the blast pattern is exactly identical to that of what we, that of the Richter scale readings of the earthquakes that we witnessed here in the United States. They even had bombers flying overhead, bombing the hills out west along the Arizona Mexico border, and they were taking out tunnels in the mountains and shit too. And as they worked their way east, what was playing out on the surface was the entire COVID pandemic. They needed the pandemic to go on. This is why Trump didn't stop it, because they needed these cities to lock themselves down, to limit traffic, limit movement, limit people flying. So if anybody was under indictment and being sought after, if they tried to run, they would be tracked down real easily with drones in the sky, Homeland Security at the airports, the cameras, the facial recognition cameras, et cetera, et cetera. And because everybody was on lockdown in their houses, not going anywhere, not doing nothing, these midnight raids were being conducted by the U.S. military. And there's a couple of videos that might still be online. I'm not sure if they took them down yet, but of helicopters, military helicopters flying real low over cities all across the country. So these operations were going on, and the reason why nothing was being said about them is because, well, it's simple. When you're going after an enemy that's infiltrated your country, you don't make any public announcement about it. You just go ahead and do it. So on the surface, the enemy was allowed to carry on with their pandemic and take away the rights of the people, and we had our own fight to deal with them and that bullshit. But beneath the surface, what was going on was high level people were being arrested and hauled off to Gitmo. And this is why a lot of people got upset with Trump about the pandemic, because he could have snapped his fingers and called the whole shit off and just been like, yeah, it's all bullshit. The news is lying, whatever, whatever. And people would have listened, but he had to play along with it, and he had to go along with it because those operations had to commence. Now in 2020, also, we had the Black Lives Matter riots. Those riots were taking place to cover up for those underground operations as well. As they were grabbing people in the tunnels, the people in the tunnels were snitching on the higher ups. The higher ups on the surface were being rounded up and arrested all at the same time. Now, this left a window for Black Lives Matter to, turn loose and start destroying shit in the cities and whatnot, which they did, but they were being tracked by the I think it was the 10th Mountain Marines out of Syracuse, New York. They were the ones that were dressed as that the news claimed were federal agents when Trump started calling in the feds to shut down the riots. It was the 10th Mountain Marines, and their job was to identify the ringleaders, identify the paymasters, identify the organizers, so the SEAL teams or whoever it is that were going out doing those arrests in the middle of the night could go nab these people. And that's why in 2021, when they started to carry when they tried to carry on with their Black Lives Matter riots again, they didn't pick up much steam because the money was dried up and the organizers were already arrested. This is why we didn't hear much about those people being arrested in the news, because they weren't being arrested by local police. Yeah, somebody in the chat just said it. The military activity was heavy during that time because that's what was going on.
Yes, it was.
They were moving assets, they were moving targets, and they were nabbing people. And it was all being conducted right here on U.S. soil. And of course, the riots were to distract attention away from that. Because if the American people as a whole would have gotten wind that the Trump administration is going after these high-level pedos and whatnot, he would have gained a lot more support. But they had to keep it quiet because it was an embarrassing blow to their operation. So they had to keep the focus on the George Floyd riots, keep the focus on, you know, the burning of the cities, the looting, and they had to make it as bad as possible. Keep that attention.
Yeah, the whole George Floyd situation was staged anyway.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. There's a I had found an article once, and I don't know if I still have it or not. I got to check my hard drives, but it showed all the images from the George Floyd situation with the police, and it had timestamps on it for earlier in that afternoon. So that whole story was completely fake, completely fake. And guess who was the one that broke the story on social media? Sean, none other than the white man, the white black act pro-black Sean King. Which is amazing to me too. Like, how the hell black people end up with this white man leading their movement? Yeah, you know the classic saying: the best way to control your opposition is to lead it.
That's right.
And if the pro-black movement sees white people as their opposition, then it's a little weird that you got a white man leading you. You know, but I'm the coon though, so never mind my coonery.
Wow. Oh yeah, brother. You keep on expanding on that subject, bro. That's deep.
Which one? With the riots and all that?
Yeah, the riots and stuff like that. And you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like pretty much like how these people pretty much been getting rounded up and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, these arrests they weren't just domestic operations either. These operations expanded into the Caribbean, South America. That's why in April of 2020, General Milley announced publicly Operation Southcom. That was the public announcement because they had already gotten the high-level targets arrested already. Operation Southcom was going on since 2018, and I discovered that by, once again, going back to the Military Times and reading about Operation Southcom, and I discovered that it started in 2018, but it wasn't publicly announced in the United States until 2020. So that announcement was on a 2-year delta, which is a 2-year time period from the time the operations actually commenced to the time the public announcement happens. And the Operation Southcom covered the Southern Caribbean and South America. And there was other operations similar to that in Europe and in Asia, where these militaries of these countries that we call the alliance nations were actually conducting raids of their own against the high level targets in their own country. And it was all one collaborative effort. Now, the reason why the alliance was kept secret is because I don't know if you guys paid attention in 2020, but those world leaders that didn't want to go along with the pandemic business, they ended up getting whacked. So these countries were UN member nations that didn't like the agenda, didn't want to go along with the agenda. They didn't like the way things were going, and they wanted to go the route that Trump wanted to go. So they all secretly formed an alliance with Trump and started working closely with Mike Pompeo as Secretary of State. And there was a stream that I did on one of my previous channels that's now gone, where I showed Mike Pompeo travel to one country, Then a year later, all these high-level busts, mafia bosses going down, hundreds of children being rescued from human trafficking operations, etc. Then Mike Pompeo goes to another country, has a secret meeting with the leaders there. Next thing you know, 6 months later, big high-level mafia bosses go down, human trafficking ring busted up, and it was a pattern all throughout the entire world, from Europe to Asia to the Caribbean to South America. It was pretty interesting to see. So Trump has been a real busy bee, and whatever it is that's got the FBI triggered to go after, to go search Mar-a-Lago and raid Mar-a-Lago, which is, breaking news that was just announced today. I think whatever it is they're going after, it got them real scared. Now, here's an interesting fact. I think because I read a bit of the article, but I'm going to present the entire article on my next show. I think what they're going after are the Tesla papers. That's what I think they're going after, because in the article it mentioned documents that Trump wasn't supposed to have, allegedly, that he took from the White House when he left. Now, I don't know how true that is, but back in the day, John G. Trump was an engineer and a physicist at MIT, and he was working with the CIA and the FBI, the U.S. government, and he was also working with a lot of Tesla's work, Tesla's documents, Tesla's paperwork. And something happened to where the U.S. government decided they needed to seize these documents. So John G. Trump kept the most important documents, and he kept them in his family. And to keep them safe, he gave them to his brother Fred, and who was Donald Trump's father. And Fred passed those documents on to Donald Trump. And the documents that the U.S. government got were very limited and did not have the information that they were looking for. The information that they were looking for were the documents pertaining to Tesla's discovery of how to generate electricity straight out of the air, like how to use Earth as a battery to power any electrical device that you can
Wow.
find. And Trump has that paperwork. That's why he keeps saying the best is yet to come. And that's why in the SARA, it mentions specifically the release of new technologies that have been hidden from the public, because that's all based on the Tesla technology. Now, this is where it gets a little spooky, because, I don't know how you guys feel about the whole flat Earth thing, but in the flat Earth community, they were the ones that made this discovery. And allegedly, Tesla himself was a flat earther. And in studying the flat Earth ancient cosmology, that's how he was able to crack the code to discover that Earth is a giant battery. It's a pretty interesting concept, and I seem to lean more towards the flat Earth concept in the ancient cosmos than what we're being told today. But that's a whole another discussion. We don't have to get into that. Everybody has a right to believe what they want to believe, and I don't bash a man for believing what he believes, as long as he can support his beliefs without making up shit, right? But the Tesla papers, I believe, is what they're after, because some sort of technology is about to be released to the public, and it's going to blow our minds. And I think they're desperately trying to stop it, because think about it. Trump is supposed to be running for president in 2024. We got a midterm election coming up in 2022. What reason would they have to launch this raid on him right now? Unless something else is about to happen and they're trying to stop it. But that's just my opinion. They could be going after military documents. They could have been in a hit team, set up to go do an assassination on him or something. It could have been something else. Or it could have been a big staged act to, generate more headlines and create more publicity. It could have been that too. Because Trump's been out of DC since what, 2020? 2021, I mean, January 2021. It is now August 2022. I mean, what the hell took him so long? So there's more to this raid. I don't think it's just to generate bad headlines and generate publicity in time for the midterms. I think there's a lot more to it.
Oh yeah, how do you feel about the Brittany Griner situation?
Well, you break the law, you go to jail. And being a dumb American, she thought shit was sweet over there in Russia like it is over here, talking about how I just think it's ironic. I think 9 years excessive. Maybe 4 or 5 years would have been. Hold on, I'm sorry, I just got a call. 9 years is a bit excessive. I think 4 or 5 years max would have been all right. But after all that shit she was talking about how oppressive America is, to now see her actually being oppressed is a bit heartwarming. Because now she knows what real oppression looks like. So hopefully she'll come back and she won't be talking that dumb shit no more. But you never know. These propagandists, man, they don't quit. They take the money to do the job and they do their job. It's funny how you live in America, you're benefiting off America, you're enjoying the freedoms of America while running around cursing America, and now you're in a foreign land actually being oppressed, and you want America to come save you. It's a little ironic. But apparently the Joe Biden administration have been in talks to exchange her for some Russian terrorist that's being held here in the U.S. So she might catch a break and she might get to come home. I could care less, man, to be honest with you.
Got you. Oh yeah, as far as like
What are
that,
your thoughts on it? What do you think about it?
I think it's a distraction. I think it's a distraction to try to give more attention to the WNBA.
Think
I
so?
think it, yeah, I think so. Because they've been
Yeah, it could
tripping
be.
about the whole WNBA situation, and I think that the Brittany Griner thing is a distraction.
Mm.
That's what I think it is.
Yeah, it's definitely being used as a distraction. But
Yeah,
I
definitely that.
mean, WNBA is a total waste of money, man. It's a charity case at this point. They don't sell tickets, and the NBA has to subsidize them.
Wow.
Yeah,
Mm.
did you know that? Bill Burr was making a joke about that. You know Bill Burr, the writer that used to work for Chappelle Show and shit. He was like, some WNBA chick was in an interview and saying something about how the NBA players get paid more than them and it's not fair. And he's like, and everybody just sits around. All the men sit around having to pretend like they don't know what the reason for that is. It's because you can't. It's because you don't sell no tickets. You got to sell tickets.
Mm.
You got a house. You got a house with over 100,000 seats, and you only get 1,500 people to show up. That's not a good night.
Mm.
And it's funny because it was the feminists that wanted the women's NBA. They wanted the WNBA. They wanted the women's sports leagues, and they don't even go to the fucking games.
They sure don't.
And it wasn't until Bill Burr pointed that out that I realized that these people are so full of shit. They don't believe a fucking word of what they say. They don't. They say all this good stuff and it sounds nice and this and that, but when it's time to actually put the pedal to the metal and make something happen, they don't do nothing. They're just all talk. So they made all this noise and all this fuss about the women not having an opportunity to go pro. The NBA puts up the money for them to go pro, and they still fucking complain. It's like some people you just can't make them happy, bro. No matter what you do. But yeah, I think the Brittany Griner situation is being used to bring attention to the WNBA. I don't think it's gonna work though. I think it's gonna be a failed mission. I don't think it's gonna work because people don't watch like the types of sports, women's sports that men watch are sports where you get to see stuff. You get to see cakes, like volleyball and swimming and shit like that, where you know what I mean? Gymnastics, where you get to see something. Who wants to watch a bunch of dudeish looking chicks run up and down the court and pretend to be dudes playing basketball and they can't even dunk? They can't dunk. Gotta be able to dunk. But that's just my opinion. I'm not really a sports guy, so We could shift gears and get into something else if you want,
Yeah, I was about to.
man.
Yes, and as far as like we was talking about like the military dumps, like have you heard what do you think about like, as far as like more of like these celebrities, these people being taken down and stuff like that? Would you like to share more information about that, as far as like these celebrities and stuff like they're being taken down? And there's also been talks about how the dollar bill is being dropped out of countries. Can you expand on that?
Oh yeah, let's talk about the celebrities. You know, the celebrities are disappearing because their Twitter accounts are going inactive, and the pictures and videos that are surfacing of them don't look like them, and the ones that do look like them are all CGI and green screen and augmented reality to give us the impression that they're still around. But the dollar bill, have you guys noticed something interesting? Most gas stations, I don't know if they're doing it all over the country, but here in Central Florida where I'm at, they're offering discounts on gas if you pay with cash, right? And what they're doing is because, Trump's actually the one still running the country, even though the Joe Biden show is being projected as if it's Biden doing it, because we're going through the destruction phase. And what that is the destruction and the devaluation of the petrodollar. That's why we're seeing this inflation. The petrodollar is the oil backed dollar. So the reason why the Joe Biden show is being allowed to go on is because we had to shut off the American oil to save our reserves, and we started buying oil from foreign countries with the fake current the fake money, the Federal Reserve notes. I'm sorry. And the reason for that is so all that fake money will be funneled into the hands of these foreign oil companies. So when the US makes the switch from the petrodollar onto the gold standard and those Federal Reserve notes become worthless, those foreign oil companies are going to go under and they won't be able to produce oil at a rate to compete with our domestic oil production. So what's happening is the inflation is to phase out the Federal Reserve notes. So buy your gas with cash and you'll get a 10-cent discount on every gallon. That's what they're doing now because they need that cash to go to the foreign oil companies. They need to get that bad money out of the country. So when they reintroduce the gold backed currency, we'll all have some store of value in the currency that we have. Now, simultaneously, they're looking to phase out cash and go digital. Now, that I think is going to be a problem because not everybody's going to want to go digital. Not everybody's going to want to give up their cash. So there will be some sort of currency like those other African nations have been doing already by switching to the gold standard and introducing gold coins. There will be some sort of currency that we can physically hold and physically use, whether they be, gold receipts like the original US dollar was, or they be actual gold and silver coins. But for the most part, the gold backed currency is going to be digital and is going to be digital and protected on a blockchain with blockchain technology, which prevents replication and counterfeiting. So that way we'll have a stable economy. Prices are going to go back down because the dollar is going to increase in value, and we will no longer be using those dollars that say Federal Reserve note. All those dollars are going to be in the hands of foreign oil companies that supply our enemies. So it's a strategic attack against the enemy. The Trump administration, Donald Trump has been known to launch economic attacks against the enemies of America. In 2015, when he was running for office, he was talking all this pro-America stuff, right? Bring American manufacturing back, et cetera, et cetera. That's because under the expansions of NAFTA and the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the TPP that Obama signed, that was to ensure that the American companies moved to China. So what the Chinese government started doing is seizing their farmland, reducing their food production capabilities, and having these wealthy investors from around the world build these cities. The cities were supposed to house these American companies that were going to be abandoning America and going to China because of the bad domestic policies here. What happened was when Trump came on the scene, he convinced those companies not to leave America. And what happened was those investors that put up all that money to build those cities lost every dime that they invested because nobody moved in. If you know anything about real estate investing, if you spend money building an apartment building, you don't make that money back until people move in and start paying rent. If nobody moves in, you just lost all your money. And that's exactly what Trump did to them before he even became president. So now that, excuse me, that Joe Biden is in and the dollar is collapsing, everybody's going to blame Joe Biden and the Democrats rather than blaming Trump, because Trump could have easily taken 2020, but he allowed everything to play out the way that it played out because we were going into the destruction phase and he didn't want to get the bad rap for it. He had to put it on his political enemies, which is why we're going through what we're going through under the clowns that we're going through it under right now. It's a pretty interesting situation that we're in. Congress, the Senate just passed some so-called tax bill or the Inflation Act or whatever the hell they call that nonsense. Yeah, that's never going to happen. That's never going to get signed into law. It won't pass the House, and Congress is under COG, and they can't pass legislation against the American people until September of this year anyway. So everything that Congress puts forward, the Senate or the House of Representatives or whoever, it's never going to get signed into law against the American people. Only internal legislation can be passed, which means only legislation regulating the federal agencies and the federal government can be passed, like funding bills and so on. But as far as actual laws against the people, they don't have that ability until September. So all this inflation that we're seeing is going to continue probably until a few months after the midterm, once the Republicans, if they're able to take the House and the Senate in free and fair elections, then they're going to reverse these policies, and we're going to start. Then you're going to see us start moving towards the gold standard. You're going to see inflation and prices start to go down a bit. Gas is already going down, so things are definitely turning around for the better. But how much better is it going to get, and how soon? That I can't tell you.
Wow, very interesting. Very, very interesting. Oh yeah. Have you been seeing what's been going on as far as like the weather? I know somebody been talking about the weather wars and stuff like that. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, yeah. The weather modification, HARP, chemtrails, all that business. Yeah.
Yeah, would you like to expand on to the people as far as like what's been going on with the weather ever since CERN has been like ever since CERN jumped on, we have seen the weather has been really, really crazy. Would you like to expand on the whole weather thing?
Um. Well, I don't know. I'll be honest with you. I don't know much about what they're currently doing with these weather weapons, but what I do know is in some regions they're using them, and in other regions they're not. They've shut them down. So it looks like the Earth is trying to return itself to its natural weather patterns. But because the communist Chinese are still firing their weather weapons, the Europeans are still firing theirs. We're still, dropping chemtrails in certain parts of the country. Everything is being, everything's going into chaos. This year has been particularly hot and muggy here in Florida, so I think we're due for a big hurricane. I don't know if it's going to be naturally occurring or if it's going to be engineered, but they're definitely screwing with the weather to try to create they're trying to bolster their climate change narrative. Now, the reason why they have to screw with the weather to bolster their climate change narrative is because that whole narrative is a myth and it's based on a lie. Core temperatures in ice samples from the Arctic were taken by IPP scientists, the International Panel, the IPCC is what it is, the International Panel for Climate Change. And these are some UN scientists that took core samples that with air pockets in the ice that that go back thousands of years. And through their temperature sampling, they determined that Earth's temperatures have actually remained stable throughout the last few thousand years. Now, the UN has an agenda to sell climate change. At the time, it was to sell global warming. So they decided to manipulate the charts, the temperature charts, and remove all the portions where temperatures were going down, which resulted in a chart that showed a consistent rise in temperatures. And this fake chart is what created the whole Climate Gate scandal, where the UN put out that fake chart claiming that Earth's temperatures were rapidly increasing and global warming was a thing. So we have to control all sources of energy because we got to control the carbon dioxide, whatever. It was all a total lie. And they're going so far as to use weather manipulation in order to sell that lie. But even still, they can't sell the lie because when they make it rain excessively in some parts, we get droughts in other parts. So the earth continually balances itself out, even though they're trying to create as chaotic and unbalanced of a world as they possibly can. The reason why they want this climate change lie to sell is because their claims that carbon dioxide is a pollutant is a total lie, but carbon dioxide is one of the main byproducts from energy consumption, burning fuel. So they claim that carbon dioxide is going to destroy the earth and whatnot, which is bullshit. And because carbon dioxide needs to be controlled, we now have to regulate how much you drive. We have to regulate how much you eat. We have to regulate how much fuel you consume. We have to regulate how much electricity you use, et cetera, et cetera. Sounds like a blueprint for total enslavement because that's exactly what it is. They need to control the resources so they can control the people. Now, the thing about carbon dioxide is this. When there's too much carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, their claim is the atmosphere becomes superheated. But that's not true because if you know anything about botany and plants and trees breathe in carbon dioxide and produce oxygen. And we, as humans and animals, we breathe in oxygen and breathe out carbon dioxide. So it's a healthy balance. And when there's excessive amounts of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, we see around the world exactly what we're seeing today, where deserts are starting to turn green again, rainforests are starting to thicken up, and you're starting to see more plant growth. That's all. And more plant growth simply means more oxygen being produced. So the more carbon dioxide we put into the atmosphere, your enemies would like for you to believe that you're destroying the earth and you need to stop it, when in fact, if we stop producing carbon dioxide, the plants will die off, which means we'll die off because the oxygen levels are going to drop. So everything they tell us that they want to do to save the planet is actually to kill us all off in reality. I mean, if you look at an oil pipeline versus a lithium mine, it's obvious which one does more damage to the earth. The lithium mine, where they mine these batteries for their electric cars and shit. Mind you, the electric cars that need diesel generators to charge them. So the whole climate change thing, it's all a bunch of crap. It's all a bunch of nonsense. And it's about time that people stop falling for it. That's why whenever I hear people talk about, I'm doing work on the climate change this and climate that, it's all bullshit. They're not to be taken seriously. They're clowns, is what they are. They're clowns perpetuating a lie that goes against every rule in basic biology, which is carbon dioxide is not a pollutant. It is plant food.
Wow, interesting, man. Have you seen the drought that's going on in our country?
And where?
The drought that's going on in our country. We are under a severe drought.
Well, the funny thing is, bro, some parts are having droughts and some parts are flooding. Eastern Kentucky just had a bunch of flooding. So it looks to me like they're just moving large amounts of water and they're not really, the droughts aren't really naturally occurring. They're just diverting the rainfall, is what it is. And the last time I reported on anything drought related was when those thousands of cows started dying off on those beef farms down in Texas. And they were claiming that it was the heat, but it looked more to me like they were poisoning them. And then I went over a couple of articles where the federal government actually has hired contractors in the past and tasked them with killing off entire herds of cattle. So it's not something unheard of. But the Native Americans had a trick to fight the droughts. You know the whole rain dance thing?
You heard
What
about
they
it?
would do? What they would do is they would actually go from village to village and they would build giant mounds of, sticks and wood and flammable material. And they would all simultaneously light bonfires and let all that smoke go up into the atmosphere. And that smoke would actually collect moisture and it'll make it rain. That's why it rained for days on end after the Battle of Gettysburg, because all that gunpowder went up into the atmosphere, attracted moisture, and caused it to rain. This was the first human experimentation when it comes to weather manipulation. The Native Americans, indigenous Americans were the ones that mastered that art. So wherever there's droughts, light fires. Not too much fires, but controlled fires. And you will get
Yeah.
rain.
I just want to be mindful to the people inside of the chat. Be respectful, to the guests that's on the panel, reading some of your comments. Even if y'all don't agree with the guests, still keep it respectful, okay? You will
Hey
be
man,
booted
it's all
out.
good, man. It's all good. If they want to criticize, they can criticize. That's fine. I don't have a problem with that. I'm not. I don't even see the chat, so you know.
Yeah,
But I
you
appreciate
understand.
you. I appreciate you.
Oh yeah, definitely, no doubt. Yeah, let me see.
I mean,
Yeah,
if
what
there's
else?
questions, I'll be happy to answer questions.
Oh yeah, any questions for Citizen Man? Any questions? Any questions in the chat for Citizen Man?
Perhaps some of those people that were being disrespectful might have some questions, maybe, or maybe they just want to talk shit. I don't know. I always found that weird where, you disagree with somebody and you feel the need to talk shit to them, and then they open up the floor to entertain your questions and comments, and then same people that were talking shit don't have nothing to say at that point. It's weird. It's just like almost anti-intellectual behavior. I never understood that. Because there's
Right.
people out there that I don't agree with, and I don't like shit they talk about. But if they open up the floor for me to come on and challenge them, I would definitely challenge them.
Here's a question, Citizen Man.
What's with the war with China? I think the war with China is actually a setup to get China militarily neutralized. Meaning, when Russia moved on Ukraine, the whole world was watching and the United States did not intervene. And I think that gave China the bright idea to try to move on Taiwan. The war with China it's a trade war where China wants to be the world superpower, the world military and economic superpower. But in order for them to do that, America has to be dethroned as the world economic and military superpower first. And they have done a great job infiltrating our media, our university system, our banking system, every aspect of American life in order to collectively work to bring down the nation from within, whether it be through paying off politicians to do their bidding or buying out media outlets to sell false narratives to the American people. But it's all because China wants to be the world top superpower. Now that they're moving on Taiwan, we got bombers in place, we got ships in place, and we got a lot of assets in place around China ready to move on them. So it looks like China is being set up for a kinetic strike by the United States once they decide to strike Taiwan. So hopefully nothing becomes of that, and it's just all a bunch of posturing and tough guy acting, and nothing actually happens. Because if a war starts with China, then we'll definitely see those. You remember what we talked about with those illegals in the beginning? We're definitely going to see those kinetic operations start commencing here at home. And that's when things are really going to get dicey. Judah says, why did they raid Trump? Well, Judah, I haven't read the full details of it, but my best guess is they're looking for the Tesla papers. That's what I think. I could be wrong, but they did mention certain documents that Trump took from the White House that they didn't want him to have. That's what they were looking for. They're looking for specific documents that were supposed to go to the National Archives, but he kept them. That's the official story. I think it's the Tesla papers, but like I said, I don't know because I wasn't there. Anybody else? Any other questions, B-Mouth? Do we have a purge or civil unrest coming? Will there be a railroad strike this week? I don't know what strikes are going to happen and when. And I believe we're actually going through the purge now. And I think the purge is the SMAC program, the vaccination program. The people who are willingly lining up and taking it are going to die off, and the people who are smart enough not to take it are going to survive. That's what I think. What was that super chat question, B Miles? It said something about Roe v. Wade. Expand on how Roe v. Wade fits into the agenda. Well, Roe v. Wade was simply for population control and organ trafficking. You see, they wanted Roe v. Wade so all the states would be forced to allow abortions. Once all the states are forced to allow abortions, women would have access to abortions in all 50 states. Some states they would have expanded abortions, some states they would have restricted abortions. But once a fetus makes it into the second trimester, certain organs within that fetus's body are fully developed and are viable for sale and for reuse. So the whole abortion thing, it ain't about women's health care like they like to frame it. It's about organ trafficking. They want those fresh organs. And the overturning of Roe v. Wade, what that did was that basically drew the battle lines between the states that won't tolerate that shit and the states that will be involved in that shit. Because the states that are now using their state rights to either restrict or expand abortion are massively expanding abortions. Meanwhile, conservative states are restricting it. So we know who the organ traffickers are now. Biden said Tesla to China. Biden sold Tesla to China. Did he? Biden doesn't own Tesla, so he couldn't do that. So no, that never happened. Tesla's a privately owned company. Now, did China buy the company from the private owners? Possibly, but it wasn't Biden that made the sale. What does Ukraine and China have on Biden? The biolabs. They have the biolabs. China has the biolabs, which have since been destroyed and neutralized, and Ukraine has the biolabs, which have since been destroyed and neutralized. But they have all the communications between the Obama administration, Joe Biden, his son, and everybody else involved. They have all their communications. So they got a lot of dirt on these guys. And if you look closely at Joe Biden, that ain't the same Joe Biden from the Obama administration. And it's painfully obvious. Any more questions, B Miles, or?
Give me 1 second.
Oh, okay.
I'm looking in the chat. You already saw this one right here about Ukraine and China.
Yeah, Ukraine and China. Yeah, I literally just answered that one.
Okay.
What, they roasted me that bad in the chat, bro?
No, and people trolling and stuff like that. So we just.
Yeah, there's always gonna be trolls, man. That's a given. Especially when you're telling the truth.
Mm-hmm.
If I was sitting up here making up shit and lying, they wouldn't be saying nothing. Citizen Man, who is we the people? We the people are the people of this nation, the citizens of America. When the founders wrote the Constitution, they were not politicians, nor were they government officials. They were military commanders. So, and they were Freemasons as well. And that's where things get really interesting, because today in America, there's a divide between the Freemasons, where you have the guys that identify as American Masons and the guys that identify as international Masons. And there's still an ongoing rivalry between those two groups. But when they wrote the Constitution and they wrote "We the People" in it, they were writing it on behalf of every man, woman, and child in America who were considered American citizens. Obviously, the slaves weren't considered American citizens until the 14th Amendment, which was birthright citizenship, which afforded citizenship to the slaves and the descendants of the slaves who previously weren't incorporated in the "We the People." So today, "We the People" means each and every one of us. And that's what makes America so different from most other countries. Because in that document, the Constitution, if you read it carefully, It's the law, the supreme law of the land, but it's not the law that governs over the people. It's the law that governs over the government. So when they started off by writing "We the people," they were literally stating "We the people," and these are our demands of you, our representative government. So "We the people" literally means we the citizenry. If you're a U.S. citizen, that's you. If you vote, that's you. If you work and pay taxes, that's you. It literally means everybody except those serving in Congress, because those serving in Congress are the representatives of we the people, or at least that's the way it should be. 1871, they changed that up and made it we the people, as in we the corporation, but that's a different story. Do you think the feds are going to support illegal immigrants coming to New York City? Well, it seems like they already are, brother. It seems like they already are, and they're not really looking to do much about it. I mean, on an individual basis, if you ask each individual Border Patrol agent if they support it, obviously they don't support it because it goes against the duty that they swore to carry out when they took that job. But as far as upper management, as far as who's giving the orders, those guys, they want the illegal immigration because it serves their agenda. It keeps their masters in power.
All right, we're gonna do like two more questions. We're gonna close it out.
All right, cool, cool. And make sure you guys hit the Cash App and support Brother B Miles, man. This brother works hard and he needs the support of the people. You really want to know who we the people are? You hit that brother Cash App and you'll see who we the people are.
And also vice versa. Show love to Citizen Man as well. And subscribe to his channel as well.
Hey man,
You know?
I'm a marketing guru, bro. I got I got it on lock, son. But I appreciate it. But yeah, make sure you guys support Brother B Miles, man, for real. Support that brother. You want to see more of him? You make this his job. Make this his job. Think about it. Don Lemon and them get on CNN and they make millions. What's Don Lemon make? Like 5 to 10 million a year sitting up there fucking lying every day?
Pretty
You
much.
know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? And brothers like us, we risk our lives, our livelihood, our freedom just to get on here and tell you guys, bring you guys the truth and bring you guys the information that you'll have a very difficult time trying to find on your own, because that's what we do. And the support is necessary because the support, it also shows that no matter how much they try to censor us, the people are always going to have our back. And as long as the enemy sees that the people have our backs, we will always be a threat to them. And most times voting with your dollars is how you show that support and how you show that love. You know what I mean? And shout out to Sister Iman. Sister Iman just put 15 on my Cash App. Appreciate that, sister. You didn't have to do that, but thank you.
Good job, Sister Iman.
Yeah, save that for my show. Make me look good on my show. It's B Miles show. You got to get at the B Miles.
It's all good.
Nah, for real though, like we got to start supporting each other. That's the number one. That's one of the number one weapons that the enemy has over us. Is they have large financial backing because they got the corporations behind them, they got the royal families behind them. But you know what? If each and every one of us individuals who are willing to put our necks out there and start bringing this truth, if we can get $1 from the 300 people that watch the show or the 200 people that watch the show, that'll put us in good enough standing to where we can really get involved in this fight. You know what I mean? We can take those days off work and go down to the courthouse and file those lawsuits. We could take that time off work and do that extra research so we can break the shit down to you guys the way you need to understand it. You know what I mean? It counts for a lot. I tell my audience all the time, if I don't hit my goal every show, that means I'm going to have to spend more time out in the field to make up that revenue, which means less time that I have to research, which means the less powerful my live streams are going to be because I don't have the research to back up what I'm saying because I didn't have the time to do it. And that's what the enemy set up this whole system to do, to keep us so busy working, trying to survive, that we don't have time to do the research. You know what I mean? And for the few of us who are gifted with the ability to, analyze the information and break it down to the molecule, for you know, for the rest of us, we need that support, man. You know what I'm saying? And it's very, very important. Look at what they're doing to Alex Jones right now. Alex Jones exposed Sandy Hook, and now they're suing the man, and now he's about to lose damn near $50 million. So if the money didn't matter and the money didn't mean anything, why are they constantly going after the money? Because they know if you don't have it, if you can't get it, you can't do nothing. You're powerless. You can speak till you're blue in the face, but who's going to listen if you can't afford a microphone or a megaphone? You feel me? I mean, brother B Miles, I don't know how how you conduct your, your business on your channel and stuff like that, because I don't see you doing too much promotion, but I'm not trying to step on your toes or nothing or make it all about the money or whatnot. I just want to show people that the information is important and the financial backing is just as important. That's the only point I'm making.
Mm-hmm. Let me see. What about this right here? Another question.
Okay, what's really up with the Space Force? Aliens or what? I love this one. Go onto your mobile browser and search Space Force on Google and click on the Wikipedia and scroll down to where it says role. I show this on my live stream all the time. Space Force it was named that way deceptively to keep us looking up and thinking about outer space. But Space Force is really about the information space. Domain space awareness is what it says under role. That means the internet. Space Force is monitoring the internet looking for human traffickers. That's why they've been busting all these online pedophile rings ever since Space Force has been in existence. So Space Force is about the internet, the information space. Has absolutely nothing to do with outer space whatsoever. But it was deceptively named that way to throw off the bad actors online, because as long as they keep thinking Space Force is about outer space, they'll continue to operate freely, which resulted in many of them getting caught. I actually have a slide that I show on my channel where I demonstrate how they encoded the true role of Space Force in the Wikipedia role on mobile view. But it only works on mobile view though, which is interesting. You can't do it from a computer or from desktop on your phone. Any more questions, B Miles? Or Blood Raw says, what about the solar flares? That's a tricky one. That's a tricky one, because my belief in what the cosmos is made of is probably way different from what you guys think. So that'll be a whole nother conversation for another day. But for the short answer, I don't believe in that shit.
Okay.
Anything coming out of NASA and the space program, I take with a bag of rock salt.
Got you, bro. Yeah, man. I definitely appreciate you. You know what I'm saying? We're definitely going to close it out here. I definitely appreciate the time, brother. You know what I'm saying? Coming up on the platform, man, and just, share some information about, what I mean, from your perspective, like what you've been saying, some of the things and stuff like that, man. Like, any more remarks before you go?
Say what?
I said, any more remarks before you go?
Nah, just I appreciate you having me on, brother. I appreciate you affording me your platform. Tomorrow night I wanna do a live tomorrow night, but I'm not sure if I'm gonna be able to. But my next show is scheduled for Wednesday night at 10:30 Eastern. So if you guys want to tap in and check it out, feel free to do so. I do have a Rumble page that's up. My Rumble page is linked in all my YouTube videos, where I got way more content on Rumble. A lot of the stuff that they took off YouTube is still up there. So, you want that hardcore information, go to Rumble. And yeah, man, that's pretty much it. But I do go live on YouTube Sundays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 10:30 Eastern. So if you guys want to catch me and you don't get the notifications or whatnot, I try to stick to the schedule so we don't need the notification. So Just keep that in mind.
All right, brother. Sound good, man. So we're definitely going to close it out here. And like I said, definitely I'm appreciate you coming up on the platform. And I definitely want to appreciate all of my subscribers for coming inside of the chat. And like I said, though, fam, it's been another great live stream. And so we signing off right here. One love and peace out.
Peace.